Jokic goes down. Will Barton steps up. But boy, that bench. Nuggets lose to the Jazz. This is Locked On Nuggets. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Nuggets. I'm your host, Matt Moore. Thanks for joining me. I am the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, and I am the Nuggets insider for 104.3 in Denver. You can catch me after every single Nuggets game on 104.3 The Fans post-game show with Sean Drotar and Sandy Clough. It's a great listen. You should check it out if you're listening. If you're in the car on the way home from the arena sometime, check it out. I want to tell you that we are so grateful that you made us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Just me tonight because it was a late game out in Utah, 8 o'clock start here in Mountain Time Zone. So just me tonight. Here's the plan, okay? First segment, we'll go over the Jokic stuff. And there's, stuff to talk about, nothing to panic about, but we'll talk about that. Second segment, we'll talk about who stepped up when Joker went down. And the third segment, we'll talk about the bench because we just have to talk about the bench. That's the thing that we got to do again because it continues to just, what's the word I'm looking at? Suck ass. That's what the bench continues to do is suck ass. All right. So let's go ahead and start with like the big picture thing. So Nikola Jokic absolutely annihilated Rudy Gobert again. Just one of those classic Joker just destroys the best defensive big man in basketball nights. 8 of 9 in 15 minutes, 3 of 3 from 3, 6 boards, 6 assists, 24 points in the first half, well on his way to what would have been an absolutely monster night, maybe one of the best performances of his career. He was absolutely dominant. There we go. And then bumped knees with Rudy Gobert on the baseline. Went down, was in pain, limped off, went to the locker room, tried to test it at half, said it felt weak, and Michael Malone pulled the plug. I was like, nah, if that's where you're at, we're not doing this. So he doesn't play in the second half. Knee contusion is what it was listed as, which is a knee bruise, right? Here's what I can tell you. No x-rays were performed as of the end of the game, okay? So I would imagine probably at some point there will be imaging done, whether it's an x-ray or an MRI, because you want to be sure on these things. If you're like, well, what's the concern? The concern, in my opinion, is that you're worried about a patellar injury, which that's your kneecap, right? What you don't want is you don't want a patellar fracture because that's bad. That would be very, very, very bad in all sorts of cataclysmic, apocalyptic ways for the season, for the Nuggets, short and long-term. Like everything is bad if it's a patellar fracture. It's not career-ending, but it would just be very bad. I will say that usually if you suffer a patellar fracture, it hurts so bad that there is no way that you're like, I might be able to go. That's not how it goes. In my experience, not that I've had one, because I don't slam into giant 7-foot people as part of my job. But from what I've understood from talking to players is with the patellar injury, you do know quite immediately because it hurts so bad, the fact that he felt like it was, quote, weak is not good. But Malone said after the game, he didn't think it was, quote, too serious. Monte Morris said he spoke with Joker, and Joker said it would be fine. And there doesn't seem to be like a whole... When a player is seriously injured, there is a pall. And you could tell, like, after the Jamal injury, like, everyone knew, right? Like, you're hoping for the best, but, like, everyone knew after that game. If you were on the post-game Zooms, if we were in the locker room, but, like, you could tell immediately from Michael Malone to the players, like, everybody knew, right? That was it. He was done. Not that same sense with Joker. So, not good. Cost them a win tonight. I'll just go ahead and say that. They win this game if Joker plays. But probably, if we're talking about from a probabilistic sense, most likely scenario is that he's out a short while at most and then is back. I don't think it's impossible to say that he'll play Friday, given that they've now lost 2 in a row and the team really does not like to lose 3 in a row, and Jokic is hard to keep off the court. They don't want to lose 3 in a row. Losing streaks are bad, right? I would say there's no way he plays the back-to-back, though. I can't imagine him playing with the bone bruise on Friday and then playing in the back-to-back. I can't see him skipping the game Friday and then playing in the Saturday set. So we'll see. We'll have more news on it. If there is drastic news, God forbid, on Nikola Jokic. We'll, of course, do an emergency pod tomorrow and give you all the details, but then none of you will be able to hear it because you'll be drowning yourselves in alcohol of some type. But I again want to stress the most likely scenario is that he's going to be fine. I will say I asked specifically for the X-ray news from people because I needed to know, like, if they're concerned about it immediately, then an X-ray is probably done. And there was no X-ray performed per the people that I talked to with the Nuggets. Joker was incredible. They were within range. They took the lead in the third quarter, and that's not possible if Joker isn't as great as he was. He was absolutely incredible, just an MVP dominant performance. And, look, I'm just going to say it. Rudy Gobert lucked out on this one. Nothing dirty about the play. Absolutely zero. Nothing dirty about the play. Gobert after the game wished Joker well. It's like no hard feelings there whatsoever. It was just one of those things. Just freak basketball play. But all the news continues to be pretty positive for the whole Nikola situation. So that's like the good news is there's not like a whole poll. We'll keep you updated on what the situation is. But that's as far as we know. And basically that's the story of this game is that the Nuggets would have won this game if Nikola Jokic doesn't get hurt. I feel fairly confident in saying that. So best wishes to Joker on a quick recovery. We'll keep you updated on when he's going to be back or out, etc. once we have more information. Let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about who stepped up in his absence and who didn't. Some folks did not step up that needed to. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I want to tell you about SweatBlock. So it started this thing I hate in Colorado where you layer and then you're sweating, but then you go outside and it's cold. So you have to put more layers on, which makes you sweat. It's a pain. It's just a pain. And so that's why you got to use SweatBlock because you use it once at night and then you're good 7 days. It's got a 7-day guarantee. You're dry or you get your money back. And a whole bunch of different people have used SweatBlock, and we have all these testimonials from folks. So there's a story about a high school teacher. He pit out by fourth period because some schools are just they have very terrible heating and cooling. He'd hear the snickers and whispers from the students. So he started bringing a second shirt to change into between classes. That's not cool. Then he heard about SweatBlock on this program. He tried it, and he's now hooked. No more Snickers and no more second shirt. It's doctor created, doctor recommended. It's not just for armpits. You can use it anywhere that you've got sweat. Ew, gross. If you or someone that you care about is dealing with excessive sweat, you got to check out SweatBlock. Get it today for 20% off at sweatblock.com with promo code LOCKEDON or at Amazon and CVS. We will be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for making this part of your day. Matt Moore rolling solo tonight on a Locked On Nuggets post-game recap of a bummer of a loss to the Jazz with a pall cast over it by Nikola Jokic's absence. We talked about that in this first segment. Let's get into who stepped up and who didn't. Aaron Gordon was phenomenal in that first half. Malone said after the game that if he could bottle that up, they'd be in great shape. It was absolutely just terrific in that first half. He was aggressive and engaged, and like all of his makes were from inside the arc, like just attacking the rim, so efficient. He finishes with a really good night. Like even in the second half, I'll say this: Gordon finishes with 20 and 7, 4 turnovers, but 20 and 7. And in the second half, to me, it looked like he just ran out of steam on the back-to-back. Like if this is a normal rotation game, I think that Gordon probably powers through and is still attacking. Trying to get the three-pointer air ball, obviously overthought it. When it goes over 3 from 3, the three-pointer is still inconsistent. If he's hitting it, it's going to be huge. If he's missing it, it's going to be a bummer. Like, that's how it goes. But Gordon's effort was there the whole night. Like, Gordon was engaged and stepped up and was like, this was a spot where, again, back-to-back versus a dominant team, disappointing loss last night. And like Gordon showed up to help them win, and they were winning the game with Gordon. He wound up as a negative only because of the second half performance. Let's talk Will Barton. Will said last night he needed to get more assists. He only had 3 assists, but that's what happens when you lose Nikola Jokic. 21 points, 9 of 16 shooting, 4 boards, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. Did have 4 turnovers, but he had to do a lot of ball handling, especially in the second half. So he was just really aggressive, right? Like that's what you want to see. And like when a guy like Joker goes down and you've got a 1-point lead on the road, somebody's got to step up and be like, I'm willing to do this. The whole criticism of Will Barton is constantly and consistently that he thinks it's his time. It's gonna have to be Will's time sometimes until Jamal gets back and even a little bit after. Like, you want Will Barton engaged. You don't want a passive Will Barton. You don't want like a scared spot up shooter Will Barton. You want him attacking. He's got shake off the dribble, and he really created stuff in that second half and was a big part of why they had a lead and looked like they were actually going to pull it off until the bench came in, which we will get to in the final segment. I have nothing but respect for Will Barton after that performance. Like, he is taking responsibility for this team. Like, they brought him back. He's making less than the other guys on that squad, and he still stepped up and was trying to help deliver them a win. Will was absolutely fantastic. Will Barton does not deserve any sort of heat for this loss. He was great tonight. Monte Morris, another really good night. 8 of 13. You know, the shot came, was aggressive, said that Malone was in his ear, like talking to him and telling him to stay aggressive. 19 points for Monte. 4 assists, only 1 turnover. That's the kind of Monte Morris game that you want to see. 35 minutes he had to play tonight on a back-to-back. Gritty stuff. Like, it was a bounce-back performance from Monte Morris, who, you know, he shut down the talk about how he didn't touch a basketball in the offseason because of the injuries and stuff like that. Like, he shut that down. And he was like, no, like, I just got to get comfortable in my new role, is what he said, which is interesting, right? Because a lot of this, we've talked about this with the starters. Some of it, I will say, is this is the kind of the difference is like, so often fans don't want the non-stars shooting. They just kind of want them to be there, right? Like, why are you taking a shot? That should be Joker shot or whoever, or MPJ's. We'll get there in a second. But you need everybody to be aggressive, because if you're aggressive, it forces the defense to react, and that's going to open up stuff for somebody else. As long as you're willing to be aggressive and you're willing to share, you're not selfish, which most professional players are in the NBA at this point, good things are going to happen to you. And Monte Morris had himself an absolutely excellent night. So I don't know what's going to happen with the rotation in terms of the bench, which again, we'll get to in that final segment, but Monte Morris, breakthrough performance. That's what you wanted to see. Hopefully the start of a good season and like a little bit of shaking off those early issues for Monte. Great performance by him. And then there's MPJ. Okay. I got to set up this. All right. So, all right. I'm not trying to crush him. I need to be very clear on this. If MPJ was a second-year player that was drafted 26th and was trying to find his way in the league and was thrust into a starting role because Denver was too shorthanded or just hadn't managed the roster right and was forced into this position, then I would be like, look, you can only expect so much, right? Like, you know, he's a flawed player. That's why he was picked, 26th or whatever, which that's where Bones was picked. But he's not. Okay? Like, at some level, this guy was given an obscene amount of money in the offseason. But even beyond that, like, you don't pay a guy for 1 year, and you definitely don't pay a guy for 4 games, right? It's not that I'm saying that MPJ's struggles are going to continue. It's not that I'm saying that MPJ's, the problem, or that it's unacceptable, or that, he needs to get traded or anything else. It's simply a matter of, as an analyst, this is what I feel my responsibility is to really dig down and make sure that we're clear about what the problems are. And MPJ had a golden opportunity tonight, right? Gordon helped him in the first half, helped him get the lead. Joker goes out. They've got a lead, right? They're not trailing. They've got a lead. They can win this game. He's getting touches. He knocks down a 3. They keep running stuff for him. Nope. Does not happen. Does not happen. In the second half tonight, Michael Porter Jr. was 2 of 10 from the field, 2 of 6 from 3, including 1 with 20 seconds left on the clock, which it's fine, whatever. 3 rebounds, three boards in that second half, by the way. 1 assist, 2 steals, 6 points, and a -6. So he took 10 shots. 6 of those were from beyond the arc. In the first half of this contest, he had 7 points on 8 shots, 3 of 8 shooting, 1 of 5 from 3. 5 of his 8 shots were from deep. 6 boards, though. At least he was getting rebounds in the first half for 7 points. Didn't drag down the starters because Jokic was absolutely in fuego, right? Like, he was a supernova. And look, they had better numbers with MPJ on court, most of those with Jokic, than with just Jokic. It was 7 to 8. I feel very strongly that, even with young players, if you ask me, like, well, is MPJ ever going to get it? My answer is like, well, probably. Yeah. Like, he's super young and guys take a little bit of time and then they become better players. And he's extremely talented. The fact that I looked this up, he has averaging about 9% fewer of his shots from inside the paint or restricted area this season than he did last season. It's not like a huge number, right? It's like 36 versus 29. It's kind of the differential. But that difference is pretty noticeable, especially when he hasn't shot well at the rim. Like, Porter can't live on jump shots alone. It felt very much like in the first half, they challenged him and they challenged his handle, and MPJ decided that he was just going to shoot, and that was what he was going to do. And maybe that's like what he thinks he should do. Like, that's possible, right? It's possible that he just thinks, he looks at it and says, okay, we have this really great offense. I don't want to mess it up. I can shoot. Maybe I'll just shoot. And that's like what I need to do, right? Aaron Gordon said after the game, Mike is one of the most skilled shooters I've ever been around, so I'm not worried about Mike. Okay. That's I get it. Like, he's right. Like, he's going to hit shots, and that'll be better. Like, that will be better. It would feel better if it felt like, again, we're coming off of the conversation about so many plays ran for Joker. And I talked about this last time. Like, I don't know for sure that it was MPJ. We don't know who it was. Malone didn't elaborate. Not going to elaborate. However, if MPJ wants traditional touches, like, this was the spot, right? Like, this is a moment. You know, no Joker, no crazy Serbian passing big man, just normal NBA offense. You got some shooters around you, kind of. You've got, a Will Barton trying to create. Like, you've got an opportunity here to take over. And the moment went by. And you could say, like, well, he missed his shots, and most of the time he's going to hit them. That's true. But, like, he needed to play with more aggressiveness. This is what I think is tough in the modern NBA, though. I'll say this. It's tough to tell with where the game is at with all the three-point shooting, whether you're settling or if that's just like where the offense is, right? Because we know MPJ is a great three-point shooter. If he knocks down half of his threes, the Nuggets are getting separation and winning the game with like a three-point attack. It's hard to do, I think, against Utah. I think your better chance is to like grind this game down into dust and like be running ISOs for MPJ and having him jab step and hit those kind of shots, with Barton doing some flip shots and things like that, like he did. Like, that's a model that they could have done to get this win because they had a lead. If they did not had a lead, right? If Joker had gone out earlier and they were like down 10 at the half, like, that's just like, all right, pack it in, right? No Joker, schedule loss, be done. If they had a lead, this game was winnable. And they needed a little bit from MPJ. They didn't just need a little bit from MPJ. They needed what Barton gave them, and they needed what Gordon gave them in the first half, and they needed the bench to be better. And I'm not pinning all of it on MPJ. But the organization and the coaching staff made it clear that MPJ is super important last two seasons. And I have a colleague who shall go nameless, whose name rhymes with Schmeier and Schmackburn, was like, look, he started off slow last year, which he's right. Like, Ryan's right. Like, he started off slow last year and he looked lost last year. And then he settled in and he had a phenomenal season and was a 50-40-75 guy on, 19 points a game. And I expect him to get there. However, this is a tough part of your schedule. You have a front-loaded schedule, and you're going to have to survive it. And you're going to have to survive it with the bench being ass. There's no other way around it. That's where it is. Reinforcements are not coming. No one's riding in to save the bench. That's not happening. So they're going to have to win their starter minutes. And even with Joker being as great as he is, assuming that he is able to play, knock on wood, you were going to need to Porter needs to help the bench. They tried it tonight. They ran Porter with the bench because they had to, and wasn't good. They tried running it last night. They tried force feeding him after the half, and it wasn't good. Needs to hit shots, but I also think that there needs to be some level of Porter dissecting and understanding what the game needs and controlling. The game needs to be on his terms more is the best way that I would say it. So that was frustrating, but ultimately, look, it was a back-to-back. It's a back-to-back versus the best regular season team in basketball. Jazz fans think that that's an insult. It's not. The playoffs and the regular season are two different sports. There are teams I've seen who are great in the playoffs that can't do it in the regular season, and it costs them. The Washington Wizards were like this in the early 2010s. They had a playoff team that was like, they got there, they could make noise. If they got like a 4 seed, they almost knocked off the Hawks and John Wall broke his wrist. Like they were there. They were ready to make the conference finals. And who knows if they do? But then they turn around the next year and they were inconsistent and they would lose one night to a bad team and then beat a good team. They would beat the Lakers and then lose. It was like the Nuggets used to be. They never got out of that, right? As much as the Nuggets still have those games that frustrate fans, again, I'll keep saying it, 28-6 last season versus teams under 500. The Jazz are absolutely rock solid in their win profile. They beat the teams that they are supposed to beat. They beat the teams that are just one tier below them, and they go roughly 500, a little bit above versus the teams that are at their level. They're an elite regular season team. I'm not scared of them in the playoffs, but that's a different sport. They're going to try and figure out an answer for the playoffs. That's why they got Rudy Gay, who's been out, right? This is a tough matchup, but this game is also winnable. That says good things about the Nuggets, but it's also, I think, a frustrating missed opportunity in a division game in a low percentage spot where you had a high percentage chance to win. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we're the bench. The bench. I'm sorry. I got to talk about it. I do apologize. I'll apologize more after the break. But first, I want to say about Built Bar. Okay, it's delicious. It's nutritious. It's excellent. It's absolutely phenomenal. If you don't know the flavors, you're missing out. They've got coconut and cherry barcia and raspberry mint brownie. I like double chocolate myself. That's my favorite. It's just nice and simple. Salted caramel, strawberry, orange, cookies and cream, and German chocolate. If you haven't tried all the flavors, you can get a mix box where you get 2 of each of the 9 flavors. They've got 17 to 18 grams of protein, calories from 130 to 180, only 4 to 5 grams of sugar, and only 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKEDON. You'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKEDON for 15% off at Built.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, just kidding. Yeah, actually, no, we're going to be right back on Locked On Nuggets. We'll be right back. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for making this part of your day, making us your first listen each and every day. Now make your second listen fantasy basketball. Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Josh Lloyd. It's the best and the number 1 daily fantasy basketball show on the planet. It's free and it's available on all platforms. All right, final segment. I get negative feedback for harping on things, right? It's tough, I think, in the NBA regular season because the same problems will persist. If I was talking about the Jazz, I would say, look, Rudy Gobert is really underrated. Look at all the great things he does. Look at all the gravity, blah, blah, blah. The things that you hear about from all the Jazz reporters. But I'd also be like, look, like Jordan Clarkson is great one night, but he's got to be more consistent. And the defense in a playoff setting is really limited, depending on the matchup. Or I'd say, I'd probably be talking about like, look, Gobert probably, if he's going to be defensive player of the year, has got to do better than getting absolutely spit roasted by Jokic. That can't be happening because they've got it. If you shut off Jokic, then everything else goes away. You'd be hammering on the same things over and over again. The problems are fairly obvious and they don't change immediately. There's a lot of variance in the NBA regular season, but there's no things do there are things that are consistent. And so with the Nuggets, it's the bench right now. Malone said after the game, he said, I'm going to have to do something about the bench. He just said, it's just too bad. It's very apparent that he wanted to give those guys a chance and stuck with it and stuck with it and stuck with it and stuck with it. And this was I think this was the final straw. I've said that before. I've been wrong, so please don't listen to me. Like I keep saying I'm not going to listen to Michael Malone's post-game press conferences and actually take takeaways, but I keep doing it. So I do think that his frustration is boiling over. I don't think Bones is going to get the nod that you probably want. Like, I agree with you as much as I'm rookie skeptical. I agree with you. Like, if you just said, if Malone was like, "Hey Matt, what do you think?" I'd be like, "I don't know. You're an NBA coach and have been an assistant and a head coach in this league for 20 years, and your dad's been around the game for longer than that, and you've been around this game your whole life. I don't know." But if pressed, like my best analysis I can give you is you remove Facu Campazzo, you play Bones Highland, you start PJ Dozier, you play Bones Highland and Monte Morris off the bench. That's your backup combo. You keep the big rotation because you don't have any other options. And you filter in minutes with Zeke Naji, and you probably pick up somebody, maybe a little bit of Austin Rivers minutes. I'll just say, like, last night the Nuggets had the lead down to 1, and then it became a Campazzo-centric system, and it fell apart. And then tonight it was a Campazzo-centric. They had the lead, and then Campazzo came in, and it was bad. Now, I got to be clear on this. I don't think I'm my position on Campazzo is pretty clear, right? Dozier was equally bad tonight. Like, this podcast is Team Dozier. Dozier was bad last night, and I thought Dozier was bad tonight. The bigger problem is that in the second half, okay, they played 9 minutes and 39 seconds. Okay. In the second half, Dozier and Campazzo played 9 minutes and 31 seconds together. That was Dozier's minutes. They had one shot between them. One. No free throws. Dozier missed a shot, a layup. They had 2 fouls. Campazzo had 1 rebound. He had 1 assist. He had 1 steal. Dozier had zeros across the board and 2 fouls. Campazzo had 1 rebound, 1 assist, 1 steal, and 2 fouls. They were -9 in those minutes. That's your ball game. That's your ball game. Like, that's it. When the starters came back in, they were down by too much, and the Jazz were putting the pressure on and leaning on them. And without Joker, there was no way for them to get back in it. Like, even if the starters had held it, they might have lost that game. Like, I'll say this: I think the Nuggets win that game because of the momentum. But like, they might have lost it anyway, just because the Jazz started being like, "Look, Rudy doesn't have anybody that can do anything versus him because they're too small." I don't think that you got to make rotations and lineups and rosters based off of entirely what happens versus Utah if Jokic goes down. But this is why I asked the questions about the big man situation, right? Like, this is genuinely why. Is there are going to be moments in the season, whether it's Jokic gets in foul trouble or Jokic gets injured or whatever. And if you go up against a team like the Jazz that have Hassan Whiteside and Rudy Gobert, you're at a size disadvantage. Like, you can't expect JaMychal Green and Jeff Green to protect the rim without fouling against 7-footers. That's not feasible. You can outpace them. Like, I understand the model. Like, if you play spread pick and roll or 5 out and you're switching everything, which is what they did. And like, look, they switched everything and Gobert had a mismatch and still couldn't do anything because he can't do anything in the post, but they didn't need to. They just moved the ball and get you out of rotation. Campazzo had some really bad defensive plays. So did Dozier. I'll say that. Like, Dozier had some really bad. Like, I thought Dozier's defense in the last 2 games was poor. They're both ball watching and they're both trying to like hawk and make things happen so they can. I think part of it is like they're trying so hard to create turnovers so that they can get easy buckets. You can't. Like, you just can't with the personnel. You don't have rim protection. And you have a step ladder on the outside. Like, you can't do this, right? You have to play extremely sound and try and deter and keep everything in front. And that's additionally part of the problem, right? It's like Campazzo's always kind of like gambling, and that's part of his frenetic, chaotic energy. If Campazzo misses on a steal, you don't have rim protection to contain it. Like, you can't clean up that mess. It's just a mess. It's a bucket every time. But the offense, I think, is clearly a bigger issue. right? Like if we just look at this from a big picture perspective, 2, 3, 5, 13 points total for the Nuggets off of the bench. Hassan Whiteside had 10 by himself. Joe Ingles had 13, and Jordan Clarkson had 19. Like the Jazz are deeper because they are not missing two of their best players, right? But on top of it, the benches just can't do it. They do not have shot creation. They need to create shot creation. Malone said after the game, he mentioned about shortening the rotation. Okay. And that's yikes. Because you're going to have to play so many guys with so many more minutes. Like you don't want to. Will's having a good season. Finally, right? Like Will's having a good season. You don't want to play Will Barton 38 minutes. He hurt his hand tonight. He said he was fine. But like Will get banged up if Will's having to play 38 minutes because he has to carry this bench. That's honestly not fair to Will Barton, right? Like Will Barton's not responsible for carrying the bench unit. Get a guard in there that could actually take a jump shot. That's what we're talking about here is you just need a guard that can jump shot because teams are not scared of PJ Dozier and they're not scared of Composite. Now, I think Dozier can work as an off-ball weapon. This is why I like him in the starting unit. Is the three-pointer looks good this season. You put him on the outside. He's a spot-up shooter, getting cuts. He's a guy that will cut off-ball. You're basically you're putting Dozier at two guard and moving Will to point. This does mess with your small forward, but you're already kind of screwed there. You already have to play guys out of position. If you're like, well, yeah, but if Dozier plays there, we have to play somebody out of position at small forward. Dozier's playing out of position at small forward. They got to do something. I do want to note this. Rivers, I think, has gotten a bad rap because I think if Rivers was getting more minutes with someone, like he plays almost all of those like pure bench lineups. Malone stressed this, that like Austin Rivers is not the reason the bench is struggling. He's the guy that he can most this is telling though. Malone said that Rivers is not the guy that's causing the problem. He got benched in the Phoenix game. He got benched tonight in the second half. He said that Rivers is not the guy that is causing the bench unit issues. But he's the guy that gets excised from the rotation because he's the guy that's on a minimum contract that's new to the team that you can get away with. And like they're just going to have some hard conversations. It's just time for that. It's time for the come to Jesus, right? Now, I am with everyone that thinks like Bones. I understand. I will continue to say this. Like you need to be prepared that even if you got your wish and the Nuggets put Bones as the starting or the backup point guard, that they just kept Monte, they removed Dozier and they played Facu and Bones, right? That's like the easiest, I think, kind of rotational separation. Even if they did that, there's a chance it goes terribly. One, because I think Facu compacts the spacing because nobody cares about what he does offensively. And two, because Bones is a rookie. Like he did have 6 turnovers that one game. Like if you're turning the ball, if that bench unit is turning the ball over, they'll still get creamed. Bones has to play mistake-free basketball, right? Which is why it's probably better if it's Monte Morris next to him, who's a low mistake player. You have Bones in very limited situations being a slashing cutter type of guy. Like have him play Jordan Clarkson next to either, one of the other guys that's playing mainly point. Will and Bones make sense, and Monte and Bones make sense. I think Dozier and Bones make sense. Facu and Bones doesn't make sense, but then I don't think Facu and Monte make sense, and I don't think Facu and Dozier make sense, and I don't think Facu and Rivers make sense. Like to me, I'm not saying that if you take Facu Campazzo out of the rotation, the bench is better. There's still like JaMychal Green and Jeff Green are not knockdown, cold, crackdown shooters, right? They're good, but they're not lethal because they're bench players. I do think you have a better chance of if you have Bones in the rotation staggered with the starters. Now you can probably make something happen, and you may not have to rely on Will as much because honestly, like let Bones and MPJ just cook, right? Just go your turn, my turn, and go like that. That's probably a better option, but they're gonna have to figure out something because it is an untenable situation when you play as well as you did and you had a chance to win this game, and twice the bench annihilates any hope of a victory. That's going to wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with we'll recap whatever the Jokic news is, and we'll look forward to solutions and how to approach things. And Adam and I will probably bounce around the league. So Make sure to tune in tomorrow. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube page. It's up. Everyone loves it, which I really appreciate. We've gotten so many positive comments. Thanks so much for that. It's great to see you guys out there. Subscribe on YouTube. Click the little like button. Get signed up. Like the videos. Comment. Let us know what you think. Hit us on Twitter at Locked On Nuggets. Until tomorrow, thanks for joining me. I'm Matt Moore, and you've been listening to Locked On Nuggets.